Hello and welcome to another week of Growing Guelph. This week I spoke to Matt Ryder. Matt is the creator behind FTI Studios, or From the Inside Studios. Matt is honestly one of the most enthusiastic person I've ever spoken to on this podcast, or maybe ever in my life. He is a whirlwind of positive energy and a true community builder. I really enjoyed this conversation. It was a long one. Hope you enjoy it too. Joined by Matt Ryder from the Inside Studios.
Yes.
You do always say From the Inside or FTI Studios?
Mainly FTI. From the Inside Studios, I really like when it's addressed like from me to like presenting an idea to someone. But I've really become accustomed to FTI, and it's funny because with that, like it's like WWE, and like I'm a huge wrestling fan.
Oh yeah.
But when people talk about World Wrestling Entertainment, you can see them taking a breath after entertainment. So I see people doing the same thing when they say From the Inside.
That's funny.
Yeah.
There's probably something to connect on that. So I am not necessarily a big wrestling fan, but I grew up in Niagara Falls, and my first job I ever had was at the WWE Wrestling Superstore on Clifton Hill. Which you probably, like, even if you didn't ever visit, they had, like, commercials for it sometime on Raw or SmackDown. So for the 2 years that I worked there, I saw every episode of Raw and SmackDown just at the store. And I gained some respect. And I had a friend who worked there, and, like, we'd watch the pay-per-views at his place. And I have a real respect for, like, wrestling as entertainment arts. And, like, kind of, like, bringing the stage show to modern-day audiences and stuff like that. And, like, obviously there's a whole bunch of, like, bad things like wrapped up in what wrestling means.
A lot.
But, yeah. Does your love of wrestling inform your work?
I think that as a whole, wrestling really showed me from a young age to be really expressive and be like kind of like this larger than life personality. Because I found for the longest time I always like kept to myself, like your typical like high school, like keeping to myself, I'm gonna be really quiet. But I was the one that was like kind of loud, kind of like out there, because I really pulled from like the entertainment, the dramatic. Like I love drama class as well. So when I got into WWE, it quickly became my personality, where I found my everyday life incorporating like things from the wrestling world, not the physical aspect, but more like the entertainment aspect.
Yeah, the larger. It's funny how they were the modern notion of like you have to kind of build a brand for yourself and have a personality, and like that's exactly what wrestlers were doing in the 80s and 90s, and that like these larger than life ideas with theme songs, and like it was almost like they were creating their like social media brands like well before social media, but with just like the strong visual indicators of who they were and how they spoke and the emotions that they wanted to convey for their fans, like whether they're a heel or like a bad guy or a good guy and things like that. I don't know. It's really cool.
I think the coolest thing on wrestling right now is there's this character named Seth Rollins, and Seth Rollins got my mom into wrestling because of the way he dresses. Like he's a really, really, really out there dresser. Like the most grand suits. Like he wears. 2 years ago, there was those really big red rubber boots that like took the world by storm.
Oh yeah,
he wore them on Raw and wrestled in them. And so my mom would watch not WrestleMania, but wrestling with me once in a while. Now my mom and my girlfriend watch wrestling every Monday just for Seth Rollins.
That's so fun.
It's really connecting what draws them into it, into exactly what you said. You build a brand around like your character. So when it comes back to me, what I wanted to do with FTI is I really, really wanted to build a platform that allowed others to come express who they are, celebrate what they create. And I think right now it's going fairly well in that regards, because I've had a lot of friends who dabbled in like creating. They didn't really want to show it anywhere because they didn't really think there was a platform for it. And now some of my closest friends are some of the greatest independent artists I know. And I'm just like, when you have a platform and you have like a system really bring you up, you win in every aspect.
You've almost kind of like teased my first question there. I've been reading up about what From the Inside Studios is. I think I have an understanding of it, but Can you share your elevator pitch of the concept for our listeners?
Yeah, so From the Inside Studios is an independent artist platform at the forefront where we not only recognize creators in the community, we also want to make sure there is a platform for like people just getting their start in it who want a little bit of encouragement. They want extra eyes on their work. And from that, it's really become a platform where independent artists, fans of independent artists, and then kind of in the middle, both sides really connect with one another. And it's really a platform where you come express who you are and also network with other realms of art that you may have never saw yourself working with, because with every song you need cover art. FTI community has visual artists and musicians. My good friend Wednesday from Iowa said, I need someone to make my cover art for this song Friends. Here's Timmy Toucans in Germany. Timmy and you can work together, and now they have that song out on streaming. And it's little things like that, like building the bridge for two people, that has just multiplied over time.
That's cool. It seems like in the modern age, like there's so many tools and, social media platforms for artists to put their work onto, but it can sometimes feel like opening up a door in a warehouse and just shouting into the void and hoping to get noticed, when there's just so many competing factors out there, especially with, we're in the middle of some sort of upheaval where AI is. I'm feeling like it's drowning out everything.
Agreed.
And I don't even know how we're going to combat that. Like, we're going to see social media platforms, I think, rise up where they do everything they can, and maybe they have new like tech tricks to prevent AI work from being shared on it. Because when AI like just drops the barriers, or like just makes this digital, I mean, a lot of people call it AI slop. I think that's a good way of phrasing it, where
Agreed.
It's just like some of it's almost interesting, but it becomes less interesting the more removed it is from humans.
Yes.
Because you're like, oh, something can be like, AI can be technically interesting, but that's not what makes art interesting. And it's almost like it's doing the same thing for like digital creations of art as the same thing that like the camera did for realistic depictions of art, where you're like, okay, we have this tool that can capture exactly what our eyes see, to some degree, with a camera. So therefore, the value of a photorealistic artist who can capture a scene, that kind of goes down. It doesn't go away completely, because there's definitely like value in just the time that an artist puts into creating something, but the value for like practical purposes, for like, capturing someone's portrait, capturing what something looks like, cameras took away that value. And digital art now, like if you're a digital artist and you have to be putting yourself into it, and you have to be saying something with your art a little bit more, because the AI is going to take like all of that, how do I say, like because it's not realism that it's taking, it's just the digital art that isn't saying something in particular.
Yeah.
So with like our general platforms being clogged up with that kind of stuff, I think people and artists are looking for where do they find a place, where do they find a home.
With AI art, or AI as a whole, it was really funny 3 or 4 years ago. FTI, like there's two iterations of FTI. I refer to it as like old FTI, which was 2020 to 2023 summer, and then new FTI was August 2024 to present day. The old FTI, near the ending of it, I knew that I was losing my passion for it, and I was losing my want for it, because I used Grammarly AI to enhance something I wrote. And I remember vividly, I'm in my room at my computer, and I was just like, if I'm doing this, I'm defeating everything I've ever did with FTI.
Yeah.
And this was before generative images. This was before Twitter, Facebook, Instagram had their own like AI assistant. And I remember using Grammarly AI once, and I just said, oh my goodness, I got to take a step back, because now I'm relying on the robot to make me sound more professional, make me sound like I'm selling this artist more professional. And when FTI came back in August 2024, AI was everywhere on the FTI Instagram feed, because it went untouched for so long. That I said, if we do this again, if we bring FTI back, it really, really, really needs to be that platform where independent artists need to show who they are with their work, as opposed to posting something that might have been AI enhanced. The
Yeah.
song could have had a little bit of AI, like lyric writing with it as well. And to this day, it's been the most authentic version of FTI because the creators are really not only talented, but they're true to who they are, which
Hmm.
resonates with the community a lot more than just saying this artist has 10,000 streams on a song. It's more the message behind the song.
Yeah.
Yeah, AI is a whole other world I can talk about
I
as
mean,
well.
it really brings us down to like the fundamentals of what we're chasing when it comes to art and music and that, right? Because there are times when like music's a good example for me where I have different things that I'm using music for in my life, right? Where if I'm looking for like music that's to be played in the background while I'm working, sometimes it's like a tried and true. Like I like Boards of Canada and things like that, where it's like, oh, I like this like ambient sort of thing, and maybe there is a space where AI developers and that will put together art that it's hard to even call it art, put together music that will satisfy some of that like background not really listening to it music.
Yes.
Whether you should even call that music or if it's just like the auditory equivalent of like complicated white noise, because it's not it's not like an album where you can sit down and put an album on and you can know that every element of it was chosen by a designer. Like even if it's a someone like a music producer who's didn't record a single element of the music themselves, but they've remixed everything else. The fact that they've chosen to put that together is an interesting choice. So
Yes.
like I think as a tool, AI probably will be used by artists to put together some really interesting concepts, but it has to be artist directed. Like the
Correct.
artist has to be the one making the calls, because if it's not them, then what are you listening to? Then you truly are just exploring like the thoughtless regurgitations, like the
Yeah.
real slop of it all. And it might be touching in the way that it can, in the way that like an AI poem might be able to be like put the right words together in the right order that can sort of elicit something, but at the end of the day, if there's no actual voice behind it, there's no thought behind it, then that will fundamentally change the
Yes.
relationship with it. And for our whole lives, we've just been able to take for granted that everything had an element of human intention behind it. And now we're getting things that will have that element removed from it.
Yes.
And I don't know if we don't even have the words right to talk about it yet, but it's gonna come, and I think we're gonna see, and we already are, like the backlash where people will just say, I don't care if it doesn't sound as good. I don't care if there's flaws in it. Like those flaws are what people will be looking for.
Yep.
The things that make something unique and human, and I think we'll really see an embracing of that.
That's what I look for when I'm discovering an artist,
Mm,
actually. Whether it's somebody that's like a good friend of mine, like recommending someone that's in their circle.
mm,
In the back of my mind, I look for three things. I probably look for a lot, but three things that I really look for is how authentic they are to what they create. If they would use FTI as a platform to do the whole mission, which is artists supporting artists, or if the flip of the coin, if they just take advantage of it, never show love, never reciprocate it.
mm.
And then three, if their art really reflects who they are. I might have said that as number one, but what you said was so interesting, like was so on the button. It's just like the the fact that we were so used to art and just products in general having that human touch behind it, and now it's just absolutely been taken away from us. Technology definitely advances, but I don't know
Mm.
if anybody ever saw it really advancing to the point where we have to really zoom in on an Instagram photo to see if we can see eight fingers on a piece of art
Yeah.
versus if it's authentically a visual artist.
And even it's almost like the early temporary flaws that the early AI generated things had. I think those are going to be bygone in a few years too. Like there might not be any real way of knowing.
Yeah.
And then then you're just forced to deal almost directly with the artist, because the artist can say like, hey, this is something I created without that. And yeah, like you can take 100 pieces of my art, put it through something, and generate new things that will look like my art, but they're not it. And
Exactly.
it's there's other pieces of art that have and people wrestle with this, where they have the semblance of something that doesn't have a singular voice behind it. And there I'm thinking like big corporate movies and that, where you're still getting thousands of individual voices. They're just individual voices that have been steered into very strict
Yeah.
parameters of what they're allowed to express and what they're allowed to say. And even every Disney movie, every Marvel movie still has artist voices throughout. It's just been machined down to like a factory finish, and like some of the personality has been taken out of it. And AI is almost like the progression of that, where it's like it's not workers in a factory crafting things, it's just the factory is in full automation mode. And yeah.
I fully agree. Yeah.
So I mean, I guess to get back to before even we get into the roots of FTI and how it came to be, I want to kind of hear about. So you're a Guelph native, right? Born and
Correct.
raised. Can you maybe share about what you think uh, your upbringing in Guelph, how it maybe shaped you as a person, and shaped some of your passion for fostering creative communities?
Yeah. So I would say at the forefront, like other than wrestling being like my really big beacon, being really Guelph oriented and growing up in Guelph, I always found myself with my close friends who did art,
Mm,
always kind of encouraging them to do more.
mm,
And like, because like when you're an artist, you're really shy because it's vulnerability when you're an artist to like
yeah.
really showcase the art you're gonna go show somebody. So I found myself consistently growing up encouraging the artists in like drama class, like paint or art class rather, sorry. And when it all boiled down to it, I really said, wow, like I could do this in Toronto, but I would be phased out really fast. I could
Mm,
do this in Guelph. It might be okay. It might not go the way I wanted to because FTI started March 2020, which is the beginning of the pandemic. So when that happened, I really said, I'm going to take everything I've learned from growing up, especially in elementary school, especially in high school, with my close friends, foster it into something that I really, really, really would be passionate about doing
mm,
and getting over my own hurdle of vulnerability. So when FTI became Guelph oriented, it was almost a really comfortable hug in the sense
mm,
of all of my fears that I had about working in Guelph and like my experiences growing up were just that they were just fears. There was no substance to them. There was no truth to it.
yeah.
And before we started recording, when I said like I'm close friends with like musicians I've idolized that are bands in Guelph, like Excuse Me and Animal Boy, I think I looked at them as artists rather than the people that they were behind it.
Right.
And it's kind of ironic because I looked at my friends as friends who created really cool art growing up.
Hmm. And it's that distance, right, where the bands can seem inaccessible to you, or just like, well, they already have like they have the stage, they're the capital A artist. When really a lot of it's just the confidence and the fake it till you make it. And people who get on stage professionally every day of their life can still feel like immense nervousness and stage fright.
Yeah.
And in some ways it's about reframing in your mind what those feelings are, where um, one way to look at it is like, if you're feeling self-doubt, you can feel like, I'm an imposter, I'm having these thoughts because I'm going to fail, because I'm not ready. But those same feelings could be channeled as like, oh no, I'm just excited, I'm excited to get up there, I'm excited to do a good job. And it can be the exact same physical sensation in both cases, and it's all about like your frame of mind.
Yeah. This actually, like what we're doing right here, right now, I was very excited for this, but I was having imposter syndrome leading up
Mm-hmm.
to this from our Instagram message because I was like, oh my goodness, like, can I provide like a conversation that's like worth listening to from like your perspective or like
Mhm.
your community's perspective. And when I told my girlfriend, when I told my mom, I was just with my friend Colin, they looked at it as the coolest thing ever. They said, "Oh my God, you're going to kill this. Like, you're going to do so good. Like,
Mhm.
people deserve to know what FTI is because there's artists looking for platforms like FTI." So on the drive over here, I listened to this band called Half Alive, and Half Alive is like my take all my nerves out of my body and really just let me go for it. Because
Mhm.
imposter syndrome is something that I struggle with a lot, but I struggle with it because I want to be able to provide a platform for artists, but also make sure it's backed up by honest, genuine truths as opposed to what I think I can do.
Yeah. And I mean, I think from an outsider perspective, it's easy to sort of say like, "Oh, well, your imposter syndrome is just there because you care,
Yeah,
because you respect artists, that you respect people's time, like you want to do a good job." I think people who are extreme like narcissists probably never get imposter syndrome. Like,
agreed.
has Donald Trump ever felt like an imposter in his life? Like, no, he's felt like the most confident person ever,
Yeah.
to everyone's detriment. And there's probably a lot of people like, like yourself, who struggle with that self-doubt, like other artists that could be listening, where they're like, well, my things aren't good enough. And a lot of that's just, they're well aware of the gap of what they're doing versus maybe what they want to be, or like the sort of artists that they idolize. So they're forever seeing themselves as just like, well, I'm just low on the rung, I'm trying to improve and I'm getting there. But it's because they're just so self-aware of the passion for what they want to be doing, and they wouldn't be a good artist if they weren't always striving to do better, to make something interesting. Yeah, at a certain point, it's, you almost just have to take a step out onto the ledge and jump in a positive way, like in
Yes, you
terms
know,
of
100%.
in maybe a diving board. Take a step out of the board and jump, because you're yeah, you just kind of almost have to trust that the audience will be there. And I mean, I think or I should ask, like, have you felt the Guelph community embrace FTI as a concept and as yourself as a figurehead in that?
So I've always tried to find the word to say this to really reflect how I feel on the inside, but I'm really bad with words because I'm really precise with how I talk about FTI, even though I sound like I can ramble on.
Mm.
So the first iteration of FTI 2020 to 2023, I had the most unwavering, loving support from so many people because FTI was online based. So I was meeting like
Mm.
creators just in like pockets of the globe. And it was really cool. And it meant a lot to me. Like my good friend Jordan in New Zealand, his username is Enigmatic Entity. He narrated 165 newsletters for free. And when I tried to pay him, he didn't let me pay him. And
Mm.
then I had Artie and a gentleman named Grayson, who Grayson lives in Guelph. And then Meg and Matt. I could name everybody who was a part of FTI from 2020 to 2023 and now. But I always felt the disconnect when I would go to like a Jimmy Jazz or I'd go to Red Papaya.
Mm.
I'd see Cat Steves perform. I'd watch just like Excuse Me and Animal Boy perform. And when like I'd make like conversation, it always comes up when you meet someone like, "Oh, what do you do? Like, what do you do for work?"
Mm.
And then I would say like, "Oh, I used to run this platform called FTI," and they're like, "Oh, Guelph needs that." And I
Mm.
was just like, don't say that because like I'm kind of getting over the hurdle of like I really think you're right, but I don't know if Guelph will embrace it the way my brain has created this picture that I want it to.
Mm.
So to answer your question more precise, November 8th, 2024, last November, to celebrate FTI coming back, we hosted an event called the Relaunch Concert. And it was three of my best friends who are incredible musicians in a variety of genres. I put them on the stage at the Underground Taboo. It was a mixture of experimental hip hop, 90s boom bap, pop, bedroom pop. Like out of three people, like it was Emerson Corleone at the boom bap. Shoop did the experimental hip hop, and Average James partnered up with some of his closest friends like Hayden, Joe, Nick, yes, and Hunter being Average James, they made Hunter's music that Hunter created in his bedroom in a whole other sound.
Mm.
And I remember vividly, and I say this a lot, I looked out to the crowd of 135 people, understanding what FTI was in one night that I could not verbally pitch in 5 years
Mm-hmm.
or 4 years at the time, rather. So my uncle Fran, he thought we hired Average James out of Toronto as like the big, this is why you got to come to the event. And I was like, no, I went to high school with Hunter. I've just been
Mm-hmm.
following Hunter since his first name way back when. And he's an incredible musician. And I had so many of my close friends who just doing the friend thing, supporting what you do. Like, oh, I love what you do. I don't understand what you do, but you know, you have my undying support. Now they're some of the biggest FTI Ryder guys with me
Mm-hmm.
because they understand the importance of independent artists and they understand the importance of supporting Guelph. And to kind of wrap it with a bow, I have never felt so much love for being a part of just being a very, very, very small wheel in Guelph, knowing that what I can do can provide confidence and can provide a good experience for people in Guelph who want to know who's playing at Taboo, who's playing at Jimmy Jazz, who's
Mm-hmm.
playing at Brothers. So yeah, like it has been the most indescribable feeling ever.
It seems like the nature of these, and like this is just maybe a outsider's perspective, but it's like you'll feel like an imposter. You'll feel like, oh, you're just a small wheel, and it. But then you'll turn around one day and be like, oh, am I part of the old guard? Am I part of like a mainstay of what the Guelph music scene looks like and that? And I kind of see that in your future, that you'll just be so focused on the striving and the like moving forward that you'll always be in awe of like the things that came before you, and then one day you'll turn around and without even realizing, it'll be like, oh, I guess it's like your turn to like mentor the next, like the people coming up behind you, and like, yeah, I could just definitely see that happening.
Thank you.
Guelph has kind of a unique place. Like, it doesn't seem like Guelph is just a kicking off point. It feels like there's the motivation to have like a music scene that's an ends to itself here.
Yeah.
Like, do you see that as well in the city, or do you feel like is there still that temptation where a band will get big and then it's their next stop is to like move to New York City, move to Toronto, move to like another quote unquote big city?
I might be very ignorant with saying this because in high school, I went to high school from 2013 to 2017. And I was really not focused on like what was happening in Guelph.
Mm.
But, and maybe it's because I'm really involved in it now. I never remember Guelph being like the go-to spot to celebrate any arts other than like your hillsides
Right.
and like the Gain Fest. And so I'm not sure because I could be entirely wrong, and I'll be the first one to say like, "Oops, I was wrong." After someone
Mm-hmm.
corrects me, that Guelph's always been striving with like music, visual artists, fashion designers, etc. But right now, how Guelph is, I think it's a place where artists want to come perform.
Yeah.
And my reasoning for that is because I work alongside two incredible people. Their names are Hayden and James. They run a band booking promotion venue or a business called Noise Floor Productions. Hayden is the guitarist in Noise Floor. James kills it with audio engineering. He's in a fantastic. He can make anybody sound like $1,000,000. And last September, they were doing a show at the Art Bar for a band called Frantic Lullabies in Czech Hotel. And Hayden asked me, he's like, "Hey man, we were thinking about bringing you in to kind of like help us like do doors to like just make sure people get in, make sure people know where they go, even
Mm-hmm.
though the art bar is like a big rectangle." And I was instantly down. And it was kind of similar to this, where leading up to it, I was like, I'm not the person they're going to be looking for to do this. It'll be like a one and done.
Mm-hmm.
I think I did 8 events with Noise Floor, all voluntary, because I saw just how many bands from like a London, a St. Catharines, a Toronto,
Mm-hmm.
etc., would travel from their cities to come play in Guelph. And it's a really generic thing for an artist to say on stage, like, you guys have been the best yet. But the artists are genuinely telling you that because they're so high on their adrenaline of performing for a room full of strangers,
Mm-hmm.
hearing their music for the first time. So I think Guelph has for sure become a place where artists want to come perform because of businesses like Noise Floor, because of businesses like Brothers, Jimmy
Yeah.
Jazz, really emphasizing you got to come play here. And now we got Sonic Hall at the old Onyx. And
Mm-hmm.
Sonic Hall is doing this amazing thing. And it's sort of funny that I see it as like an old head, even though I was 11 when it first happened. Riverside hosted Canada Day every year, and it
Mm-hmm.
deteriorated so fast. Like I remember as a kid, my dad would bring me to Riverside, and it was like this fireworks. You had the practically hit playing. You had these bands playing throughout the day. 2 years ago, they banned fireworks, so
Mm-hmm.
Sonic Hall took over Riverside for Canada Day this year, and they're making it a must-see event now because they know there's people in Guelph that want to do something like a Hamilton Supercrawl because it's the same
Mm-hmm.
company.
That's cool.
Yeah, because Sonic Onion out of Hamilton bought like they are Sonic Hall,
Mm-hmm.
but now they bought the rights or however it worked to host an all day concert for Canada Day in
Oh,
two
that's
months.
cool.
Yeah.
I think this will be a big Canada Day, just with Canadians are reevaluating our relationship with our nation,
Yes.
and a lot of us were, it's kind of it's easy to like be critical and not super supportive of your country when things feel secure, and then when you get the threat from the outside, and it's like, oh hey, wait a second, like we're allowed to criticize our country, but we want it to be a country and we want
Yes.
it to exist, and then suddenly there's this like existential threat that is hanging over us, and I think it'll be a big important Canada Day for us, and it's good that we keep having that cycle of conversation just as like what the country means to us, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's good for people to kind of be engaged on all ends of that spectrum, and that's sort of my initial mover for starting this podcast. Was I found myself being too focused on the big picture federally and just not engaged with the city that I call home, like here in Guelph, and wanting to say like, okay, what if I created a platform that was just Guelph focused? And no hate to like all the other amazing communities that are around us, but there's other platforms for them, and
Exactly.
like to just have a thing that says like, hey, here are things that are happening in your city that you can support with your like by actually like, it's not just a social media follow, it's not just something you can do virtually, like you can find out what's happening here, you can go take part in person, and I guess it's just like a backlash to the digitization of our lives. And well, it's actually, to go back to what you'd said before, you were saying that growing up you didn't feel connected to the Guelph music scene,
Correct. Yeah.
and maybe that like that coinciding with your time in high school, like maybe that makes a lot of sense, because during that time it's normal for us to feel a little bit like, okay, I've seen my town, I know what's happening here, and you feel drawn towards like what's exciting and exotic. And for a lot of people around here, like that is Toronto, and you visit Toronto on a weekend or you go to a concert there, and it just feels like a big exciting city, or like someone's older sibling goes to school there, or like it's just this big unknown exciting thing. And your hometown is just like, yeah, it's my hometown.
I grew up there. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but then you as maybe you have, like you get more involved and you start to see that like, oh, there is a lot of passion and excitement for what's happening in my hometown.
Yes.
And my hometown is as much of a place as the big city, and if anything, like there could be like on a per capita level like more interest in the local art scene, like more people wanting to kind of get together, because there's less of a feeling like, oh, we're all competitors in this space, and it's like, no, like we can all be friends. I mean, I guess that's exactly what you're inspiring with FTI, right? Is just that like people don't have to be competitors with each other, they can join together.
I I had this interaction wow, time flies. 3 years ago, I was at an event and somebody asked me what FTI was, and I was like, I told them what FTI was at the time, and they said, "Oh, so we're a competition," and I was just like, if you view helping artists as competitions under different
Mm,
names, you're not doing it for the right reasons.
yeah.
Like, of course, I want to see FTI grow. Of course, I would love for one day it to be like what I do day to day, and I don't have to worry about going to fix a MacBook or going to fix an iPhone. But for somebody to view a platform that was really still is relatively small in the wider scope of like other platforms like Exclaim and such, I feel like the person I was speaking to was doing it for the quick publicity, the quick like, I can help you, and then you're going to owe me everything
Mm.
that you ever create as an artist. Where FTI has had so many artists come and go who went on to do bigger and better things. Because if you come and join the FTI community, all we want to do is support you. We don't want anything in return. And if there is something we want in return, it's we want you to reciprocate the love to the other artists in the circle. Um, so yeah, like I really feel as if you're gonna be in a community of artists, or even if you're just like on the marketing team, the accounting team for like Guelph Arts Council, or like another place that focuses and emphasizes what art is, you still need to have the same values as if you were an artist yourself.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really important. Um, have you found it? So I get the sense from having met you for a short while now that you're a community builder and like someone who gathers the energy towards you. But when you're building a platform, a necessary component of that is going to be the gatekeeping that you
Yes.
have to do. And like, gatekeeper is probably the last way you'd want to see yourself. But part of um, any sort of like curation of artists, of curation of a platform, is that if it means something to be part of it, then it by definition has to mean something to be excluded from it.
Yeah.
And um, have you had to help marry like the two parts of you in that mind, like your collaborative nature and desire to build connections, with like the challenges of when you need to like either say no to someone who won't be the right fit to FTI? Have
Yeah.
you had to navigate any of that so far?
So at first, one of my good friends, Colin, he probably does not remember telling me this 5 years ago. I just have the memory of an elephant. Is with FTI. He told me at the very beginning, like, you won't want to do everything for everyone.
Mm,
And that was my uphill battle because I wanted to do everything for absolutely everyone because I wanted to see the absolute good in absolutely everyone.
right.
But there was many of times where like you just get crash and burned, like especially on like an FTI newsletter. It would really be like we promote an artist and then they unfollow and they don't say thank you, or like
Mm,
an artist comes in and they're a part of FTI in their own aspect, but like if I'm like, hey, what did you think of Shoop's new song? They're like, oh, we've never heard of Shoop. And it's like, well, he's been a mainstay here for quite some time. He's consistently on the story. They're like, oh, we didn't know we had to like really support other people here.
right. They
So
saw it as like, oh, we thought we were just joining a billboard and we were going to get our spot on the billboard, but that there wasn't a that it wasn't a community.
correct. Like my girlfriend Danielle said it the best a while ago. She was just like, you really gotta realize what you're doing for others and make sure they're not putting in as much work as you, because I still want it to be like fun and exciting for everybody, but
Mm,
you really need to be met in the middle with some things. And I was like, yeah, like definitely, like don't worry about it, like I'll figure that out. And then crash and burn, and I'm like,
yeah.
oh my god, she was right. So navigating that is very hard because I love seeing the person behind the art before I can really tell the future if they're going to like crash and burn us.
Mm,
I have had to have very uncomfortable conversations with a variety of friends, like even in Southern Ontario, like Kitchener, Waterloo, Toronto, Guelph. Like I've had many of conversations where the way they portrayed what I was doing for them was more so a favor rather than something that they should honestly, and this I hate saying this because it makes me feel weird inside, but they should be grateful for. Because
yeah.
I see them as the person, but I want to help them. But it takes 2 seconds to say thank you.
Yeah. And I think that that's something that's important for someone in your position to develop, because like I can already tell you're someone with a lot of humility. Like you want to give and not ask for anything in return. And that can serve you really well in a collaborative space full of like-minded people, but it also makes you
Yeah,
vulnerable to people who are less I should say like more willing to take advantage of others, to see it as a transactional relationship where if they give the minimum and then just take everything that they can from you. I've seen that like personally myself in the corporate world where people who go through school where they're just very driven students and they want to succeed and they're driven by being told they're doing a good job. They use that momentum and it takes them all the way through school where they're being told like you're so good, and then
Untouchable.
they
Yeah.
get into the corporate world, and if they're unlucky they'll find themselves with a boss who just greedily looks at them and says, oh, like I can just take from you. I can be a complete vampire and just steal everything you're willing to give, and you will happily give 110% and burn yourself out trying.
Yeah.
And you could last in the role for 2 years, 3 years. It doesn't matter. Like the minute you can't do it and you're burnout and you say, hey, I can't need anything, then that sort of malicious corporate manager will just say like, okay, well, then we don't need you anymore.
Yeah.
We'll find the next person eager to give everything. And I think that there are some people out there who are just malicious and on like kind of on the hunt for who's willing to give everything and not take and not like ask anything in return. And so I'm glad to hear that you've are working on that, like that you're building that muscle, because
Yeah.
I think that'll be like even to protect yourself and your time to make sure that you're only giving everything to those that deserve it and that will reciprocate.
I find myself a lot of the times needing to take a step back and reevaluate myself as a person, because although I'd like to really portray myself as this always upbeat, happy, willing to help, I definitely know there is a lot of days where it can be the vice versa, and like I'm down, I'm kind of grumpy, like
Yeah.
I'm really like, because it's like the cup's full and the cup tips over a little bit, but when the cup tips over a little bit with me, it's like an explosion almost. So yeah, like you said that perfectly there too. I really think that my biggest downfall running something where I'm at the forefront is trying to be ignorant and trying to ignore the malicious people,
Right.
because I can't come to terms to tell them no. And that's just as big of an issue than any other issue I've experienced, but that's probably like on the top, because I need to be able to like put my foot down, but I don't like doing it. My great friend Derek Shoup, I work with him 5 days a week, and he, other than Danielle, because she'll say, "Why don't you say me?" Derek is my ground. Like I
Yeah.
can openly vent to Derek, and he will meet me with the most non-biased, genuine look at it from this perspective. Sometimes my feelings get hurt. I'm just like, oh, like why did you say that? Like you're right. I hate that you're right. But I know he's coming from a place of honesty, because he sees just how much I want to help somebody or how much I'm looking for help, and I can
Yeah.
never ask for help. Because I want to figure out a way to really present an idea to somebody, and if they say no or they have a problem with it, I can address it as a, okay, I appreciate this, thank you, rather than continuing to sell them on why.
Right. And then it becomes you like it can it's almost like the balance of power shifts where you're feeling yourself like pleading with them
Yeah.
or needing to appease them. And then yeah, that can be tricky. I think in general it's so tough because in the role that you're in, like you want to be just the endless like yes anding people, just taking people's ideas and running with it and that, but yeah, you have to protect yourself, but
Correct.
protect
Yeah.
who you are without losing who you are, right? Which is the tricky thing is like of the stereotype of someone being older and jaded is because they've been burned a few too many times and they've closed themselves off as a result of that.
Yes.
And it's can be that can be a real challenge, right? To thread the needle of like continuing with the optimism and the hope while still being like learning lessons and being savvy enough along the way that you can say like, okay, I recognize this pattern, I see this how this is. And also like what you were saying, if you see yourself as the endless if you're worried that the only self that you can present is the endless optimism one, in the times where you're still yourself but feeling down about something or less optimistic, you're feeling like, oh, I'm not myself today, but who you are is actually all of those things, and you
Agreed.
are a complex person, and it's that can be challenging, right? When you feel like, I think a lot of comedians and that suffer with that, where they're like, oh, people only want me to be the smiling, happy person, and then you end up having to wear a mask
Yeah.
sometimes and not be authentic.
I think about it almost daily. Like if I'm like ever in like, especially at work, like when you're on like day 3 of your 5-day work week and you're just like, oh my goodness, 2 more days till Friday, and then you see it reflect in your personality. I have amazing coworkers and I have amazing friends that if I say something to them, but I say it in kind of like a monotone, maybe a little bit of a snarky way or like a little bit of a rude way, I think about that for the longest time after. And it's a mixture of I didn't deserve to say that to that person. They did not deserve to hear that from me. Like that was very rude of me to say it to them. But it also was only a reflection of what was going on at work, at home.
Yeah.
And for me to bring those emotions out towards somebody, I'm just like, oh my goodness, now do they think of me in an entirely different light? Sorry. But I think also they have these days as well.
Yeah.
They're not going to remember me for saying one mean thing to them in a monotone, rude way.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to remember that I was very self-conscious, self-aware of what I said to them. Because I think at the end of the day, being a people pleaser, it has its good and its bad. Because if you give, and then you give, and then you give, you can lose an identity of who you are.
Yeah.
And I lost that on the first iteration of FTI. And I took 2024 to really catch up in life and like other aspects, like start driving, get a car. And then when I came back to it, I felt more redefined. I felt like a better version of myself. And I've become so much more self-aware to being able to present myself authentically with the fear that maybe sometimes I'm too outgoing.
Well, I don't think you should fear being too outgoing, but that's just like that's part of the people pleaser thing, right? Where you're like, I know it'll make, some people who will just be like, oh, you're a little much, kind of that mentality,
Yeah.
and you're like, well, it's part of the issue of like wanting to please everyone, right?
Yeah.
Like you want to people please for 100 people, and then that notion can lead you to like kind of cutting off all the corners of yourself to fit yourself into like a round hole, and like you're trying to make yourself something that you're not, because it's almost like making people accuse us of like movies where like the end product becomes kind of a bland movie because it's trying to appeal to everyone, and in doing so it appeals to no one, which is sort of like the negative end result of the people pleasing to that degree.
That's a fantastic way to put it.
Because if you're trying to please every single person, then like the thing that makes you unique or interesting to some people that can be like a turnoff for someone else is going to just get watered down.
Agreed.
That's how like corporations end up talking, right? Where if you read like a big corporation's press release or their Twitter feed or something, it can just come across as like so bland and boring because they're afraid to be anything that it's like, why are you even saying anything at all if you're just going to be the most boring, bland thing? But one other thing I wanted to touch on, and it because of what you said, it reminded me of a quote I heard recently. So you had talked about being reluctant to ask people for favors and to like take help from people and things like that. And I don't know who the creator was. It was someone on TikTok. They said, if we want to build communities and build communities within friend groups, we have to get comfortable with asking our friends for favors.
Yes.
And asking our friends to do things for us. And I think people used to be a lot more like, even the stereotype of like knocking on your neighbor's door for a cup of sugar. It's like an old timey stereotype, but it is like reflective of how neighbors used to just be neighbors and friends, and that like more entwined with each other's lives, where like you'd be helping each other to do the easy things, to do the hard things, to grocery shop, and I've seen a lot of people talk in that space of like, we don't do enough of that co-living with each other anymore. We gather for like hangouts and catch-ups and these friendly, like on neutral terms, but really we should just be trying to live life with each other, live life like connected, and part of that means asking for help. So yeah, I guess if my advice to you and to listeners is to just know that asking for others, it's not a sign of weakness. It's actually a sign of strength of a relationship and of a community.
Yes.
And leaning on each other, like you make each other stronger, if that makes sense.
And you can also inspire others by doing that as well, because FTI being like a community platform, a lot of our projects are community based. Like to break down the schedule, what we strive to do is 3 times a month we strive to do creators of the week. So like we dedicate a whole week to somebody. The most recent at the time of this recording was Jasmine Gervais out of London. She's a photographer, and that was an example where I had to reach out and ask, and but like exactly what you say, like the emotions and like that fear of like we got to get used to this. Like it's building a community. It's with your neighbors, and now Jasmine and I are pretty good friends because of it. And then yeah, the Monday's the creator of the week. The Wednesday, the creator sends me a video that I can post on behalf of them. That's like really showing them in their element. Whether it's like, for example, Jasmine did Come With Me to the Days on Parade concert. So she brought you along for 35 seconds to a Days on Parade concert. And then on the Friday, we end with the In Your Studio podcast, where it's kind of like this, where it's really just about a conversation as opposed to the rights and the wrong answers and like hitting A, B, and C. And then it's things like that that encourage confidence in the person you've celebrated all week. But it's also knowing to their community that the friend you have that was just celebrated is really freaking cool.
Yeah, and I think it's a reminder even where I can feel reluctant when I'm reaching out to people like on this podcast to invite them, where it's like, oh, am I burdening them? Like I'm asking people to sacrifice some of their time, to take some of their energy and give it to me essentially for free. But like hearing like, your reaction when you came in here, you said that you were excited for the show and that you've been thinking about it. And like, that's very heartening to hear from my perspective, because it's like, oh, like people want to take part, and I'm
100%.
not like I'm not just burdening them with a request. I'm giving them an opportunity.
Yes.
And they're seeing it as like, often people are flattered, and that's been the result. Like almost like I'm say almost every single person I've reached out to has been like, oh great. And even if they aren't able to or don't want to, they are still flattered by it. So I need to get over the idea that I'm burdening people by reaching out to them. And it sounds like you have a little bit of that too, right? Where it's like getting past the idea of like, I'm bugging someone.
Yes.
Because you're bugging them to, again, feature them on your podcast, to feature them on the weekly videos, to make them part of that community.
My big one, and it's actually really funny to me, is I have a friend in America. His name is also Matt. And Mega Matt is the most like down person for anything. He for the little bit of time here and there, he was my video editor. He was my podcast audio editor. And I said to him one day, I said, like, I hope you know everything that you do for me, I appreciate endlessly. But I'm also aware of like it's putting a hold on what you do as a creator. So I said, I'm gonna like just take over the reins. I'm gonna do it. And he was very, very polite, very honest. He's like, no, like I can still do it. And I was just like, yes, like I know you want to, because I know you're riding and dying for the FTI community. But it's people like Mega Matt. There's a circle of them that I go to consistently with the first thing I think of for a collaboration. Right now, I'm trying to put together like a Who Are You video. So visual artists on Instagram will do like an artist support post or like an artist outreach post where it's like, in the comments, introduce who you are, the kind of art you create, a little bit about yourself, etc., etc. I want to do that in a video way where it's a bunch of creators saying like the same like 3 questions to the camera, like who are you, what do you create, what's you're inspired by, and then it shifts to me, and then I really break down what the video is about. Because if it's a community telling you that, to me, other than people knowing like what James Merrill Films does, what the Nathan 709 does, what Jasmine does, it'll also show me that there's people that I can then go reach out to after to be a part of these future collaborations as well. Because it's amazing asking the same people every time, but I also want to make sure I'm asking new people to keep it really fresh. Because I do have like the same circle I reach out to, but I want to make sure that other than the same people, that there's also new people I can get over that burden with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the like new connections that you'll make, right? Where every new one is a new opportunity.
I think at the core, because FTI is a free platform, at the core, I think what I want to do is make these connections, but also always have in mind that who I think they will connect well with.
Mm.
So like going back to the beginning of the conversation when it was like putting a visual artist named Timmy with an Iowa native music artist out of America named Wednesday, and they collaborated. I love watching these collaborations happen.
Mm-hmm.
I've had family members ask like, "Oh, how much did you get paid from it?" I'm like, "You should see the smile on my face." Like they trusted me to connect two people. Again, very ignorant to knowing that like I need to figure out a way to monetize this eventually.
Yeah.
But I think that if I were to monetize FTI right now, it would defeat the core values of it being a free platform for independent artists. So the monetization, very stretched out word there, comes from like the bonus things we do. So we just celebrated FTI's 5-year anniversary and we made t-shirts. So like it's like a big community map, and if you see this map, you're like, that describes FTI because it's a community of creators and such.
I've seen the post on this. It almost looks like when you go to a theme park and they have all of the rides and the various lands and sections of the park kind of cartoonishly, like it's like a diagram kind of thing.
Exactly what it was inspired by.
Yeah.
Exactly what it was inspired by. That's actually, I'm so happy that you said that, because that's because with Timmy, because Timmy also designed that. He designed it and I sent him this really, really, really big Google Doc, and it was just a cluster heck of a bunch of just different things. And then I'm like, take all my words and here's the Canada's Wonderland world map. Nice. He's like, I got you, my friend. And then his end result was not even close to what I thought it was going to be. It exceeded my expectations.
That's the best thing, where you have like an idea in mind, but then they're like, no, I got you. And then they take it and run with it.
Timmy, like, again, one of those people, just like a Matt, like a Shoop, like Danielle, they just get it and they understand why it's so important that they're doing it for the people around them, as opposed to adding to like their resume, adding to their portfolio.
Yeah. It seems like in some way, a motivation for you on this is getting to play like artist matchmaker.
I love it.
Where like a matchmaker might brag about like the number of successful marriages or the number of children as a result of their matchmaking, but you're like bragging about like, look at this art that was like formed out of the bridges that you built between people. I think that's really cool. And like the monetization of that, again, it's a tough word, but it'll probably just happen naturally as you continue to foster that as like the art that you I don't know if I believe in like karma as a direct force in the world, but I do believe that if you're someone who creates good opportunities and benefits everyone around you, then the people that you're trusting and benefiting will pay you back in kind in some way.
Yeah, and like honestly, like it's already has been like knowing that I get to work doors for an Animal Boy show. That's just me attending a concert for free with seeing my two favorite bands in Guelph, because they trust me to operate the doors. Like I'm the first person that people see when they come to a concert.
Right.
And for me personally, relating it back to wrestling, although I know I'm there to see wrestling, the people working the doors just absolutely hate everything going on. That's the last place they want to be.
Right.
So when
it's just a gig for them.
It's just a gig.
It's just I work at this arena. I work at this thing.
Yeah. And knowing that they put the trust in me to play that position, I always want to exceed their expectations, making sure everybody is met with like, are you excited for the show? Like, it's gonna be so good. Who are you here to see? And
well, that's such a valuable role that you're playing as not just hype person, but like you're literally at the gate saying like, come on in, look how excited I am, and you're like feeding that excitement to the to the crowd, right? And to the like, you're benefiting every band that on that stage, because every audience member started their night with an interaction with like the biggest fan in the house.
Yeah.
So
I think the coolest one is there's this band. I think they're out of Quebec. I could be entirely wrong. They're called the Fake Friends. They played with Animal Boy in January or December. And the one guy I got along with really well. I think his name was Matt. It's always Matts I get along with.
There's enough of you out there. That makes sense.
It's like me at work with my last name. He gave me a free shirt, and I was just like, it's connections like this that like I wasn't expecting this, but the relationship I've now built with this guy off of meeting him tonight and listening to his music
Mm-hmm.
goes such a longer way for me than I could ever explain to anybody else.
So I guess shifting gears a little
Yeah.
bit, when we're like you were talking about that poster, and From the Inside Studios has a very distinct brand and image to it, and I think you obviously like have that idea of what it can be sort of like cringy in the seeing how the sausage is made sort of way, but it's important to have that like strong brand identity,
Yeah.
and that's a corporate way of putting at it, but one is just like knowing exactly what the look and the feel and the ethos of what you're putting together is. How do you reconcile having FTI have a strong brand with also making room under that umbrella for the unique voice of every individual artist? And then you're trying to celebrate those unique voices, but also ensuring that like FTI has a look and feel that's unique to itself as well. Like maybe you could speak to some of that.
That's an incredible question. That's a wow. Wow. That's
Just because like I imagine that must be such a challenge, right? Because like on the one hand, every individual artist within the umbrella has its own unique look and feel and brand, and like I guess that's why you went to the like maybe that's partially why the map and the like amusement park idea goes well with it, because that's like when you go to an amusement park, you're like every ride has its like unique mascot and theme and like idea of that ride, but it's all still coming together under the like Wonderland, for example. Like it's Wonderland as a brand, but then every ride has its own unique feel.
Yeah.
But that's, do you ever struggle with that of like making sure that the voice of FTI remains strong and consistent through?
What I think I struggle with, like relating to that, I'm like, I really hope this is like the correct way of answering it.
There's no correct answer. I think thoughtfulness is the only correct answer, and I'm sure your reply will be thoughtful. So go on.
I think what I really struggle with is making sure that if we're working with like a credible band or like a credible visual artist who like has like a list of achievements and milestones already celebrated under their belt, that FTI doesn't come off too corny or like too cheesy and kind of in a way childish. And I say that because, and I want to start this by saying Dylan Lorman of Couch Apparel, who I wear every day, wearing right now, he designed our mascot Atlas. And Atlas is just a play on like exploration. That's why he is. And he flies around to different planets, and the planets being the creators under the umbrella. But when you're working with galaxy as a theme, like when you're working with like space and like a cartoony feel as a theme, I sometimes wonder if the creators are kind of like, this is so off brand for me. Not me like Matt Ryder, but me as like the artist.
Yeah.
So I think putting it as like an amusement park was the first real showing of just how many different entities and like how many different areas fit under an umbrella, because it stepped away from like the galaxy space theme that we run any other day of the week, but it really tied it together by just making sure our mascot was in there, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because although it's a completely different thing than like what someone maybe who joined FTI 2 months ago was seeing, they get a better understanding of what it is without having to make sure the art, I guess, that you're used to seeing fits it. So from my perspective, struggling with it is something that happens reoccurringly. And it's solely because I want to make sure if I'm providing a platform for an artist that they're getting the same, if not better experience to tell themselves like, wow, I'm so happy I did that. I'm so happy I'm part of that. And kind of like peeking behind the curtains, which is my favorite saying of all time. I chose the first 5 or 7. I forget where I stopped, but I carefully crafted the first few creators of the week to be friends that I'm really, really close with on like a friend level and an artist level. Because if I could give Hunter, Dylan Lorman, Nathan, Tyler Warden of Warden Watch a great interview, and they're genuinely honest with me, I know they'll fit under the umbrella of FTI as they want to be a part of it as an artist rather than Matt's thing.
Right. That makes sense. And it'll like, I guess it's always difficult seeing like the legitimacy of your own thing. Like I think we always have it can be easy again, like to go back to the beginning, and like unless you're a huge narcissist, to want to like downplay your own
Yes.
successes and
Yeah.
just be like, I just have this little platform. I just like the word just gets used a lot
A
in that
lot.
kind of thing, right? And then you almost have to take the feedback and the confidence from other people to be like, no, like remove that word just from your email, remove you know, the LOL at the end of the message. That's just being millennials have this tendency to like, always be like if you're sending an invite to a friend to a hangout, be like, if you want, no big deal if not. There's always the couching things in the language of like, it's okay if you don't like me, if you don't want to say yes to this, because who would? Like, it's just a little thing that I'm doing. It's not a big deal, right?
I
And that can be a real challenge.
it's when friends use LOL at the end of a sentence, like a question, and then I'll tell them right there. I'm like, please take that out. Like, please don't end your sentences with LOL, because like you're saying it in a way where like you started off really strong with what you wanted or like what you were asking,
Yeah.
and now the LOL makes it sound like you could care less about what you're requesting.
Yeah.
And that personally, that's a pet peeve of mine. But I'm also hypocritical because what you said about like the if you want just do like just
Yeah.
I find myself rewriting the same like text message email because I make sure there's a blanket for me to rest in that email where I'm like
Right.
I did tell you like just so you know, or just if you want to,
Yeah.
instead of just saying date, address, time, this is what's going on. And the
Mm-hmm.
latter always wins, because if you can present yourself confidently to present an idea or to present like let's get together,
Mm-hmm.
it's a lot better than giving them like that choice.
Yeah, and then that uncertainty can make them think like, oh, is this just a little thing? Like it's a tricky space to navigate because it's like the more educated, the more thoughtful, the more aware and empathetic you can be, the more you can constantly feel like, oh, this goes back to the idea of like feeling like you're burdening people by reaching out to them. Like,
Yeah.
sorry for making you read my email. Here's like, and then you're setting yourself off on the wrong foot, especially if you're trying to convince people and like motivate them to join you. But it also kind of goes back to like a bigger idea of the obsession with being cringy, being like people being afraid of being perceived as being like too authentic.
Yeah.
So everything has to be like wrapped in irony and wrapped in like, yeah, like just that fear of being too authentic, because then if you're judged, it's your true self that's being judged, and it's not just like an ironic persona that's being judged.
That with Tyler the Creator years ago basically said that he doesn't enjoy people who make the work that they put out seem like a burden. So like, hey guys, just released a song last night. You can check it out if you want to. Like he's like you got to be your number one cheerleader. You got to be your
Right.
number one advocate. So for the longest time, and I still have the thought, but I've really overcome it because people know me as the FTI guy out of my friends, is I will reshare the same thing FTI has going on 7 days a week, because to you, I this sounds rude. I don't care if you're tired of seeing it. You're also scrolling through like celebrities that don't know you exist.
Yeah.
So I hope that my passion and my excitement for reposting the same thing that's going on FTI right now can pique an interest from you and kind of like grab your eye.
Yeah.
And like there has been a handful of times where someone's like, oh man, you're sharing that so much. And it's just like, that's such a weird way to like reach out. Like,
Yeah.
those are one of the thoughts you want to like keep to yourself. Like,
It's also like it's easy to just scroll by
go.
something.
Yeah.
Like we judge artists and creators for a little bit of that when like, when you hear the same ad on the radio for like the 50th time, or when you get the same ad on YouTube or something like that, like you don't say like, how, why am I seeing this again? Like you're saying you don't even think about it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know I'm guilty of that too, where I'm always judging like the things I put out as if like, yeah, like you said, like burdening people with it, where it's like, oh, like should I post more than one social media post about a person, or should I like about an episode that I've done or something like that? And there's just this reluctance of like, what if I'm annoying people? And it's like, well, they're choosing to go on social media,
Exactly.
and if they don't care, they'll scroll right by it. And honestly, I'm just lucky to get the message in front of anyone's eyes, because I'm competing with truckload of AI slop that's being uploaded every second to social media anyway.
Something that I want to say that I really like wanted to like bring up is the fact that people competing with an algorithm with eyes on social media, and like they're basically making sure that their art equals the eyes that see it as like a success.
Right.
I like, and I don't like using this word a lot, but I genuinely hate it because I can talk to like a musician, a friend. I can talk to them and go like, hey, like, when are you posting this? 12 p.m. is not a good time to post. I'll post it at 3. And it's like, I understand why you're doing it because, like, time zone, if that's why, 100%. I do the same thing. Creators of the week either go up at 10 a.m. or 5 p.m. But if you're literally looking at it like, I need to post it now, so, like, if 50 people see it, that's a success because 50 people saw it. You're right. It is a success because 50 people saw it, but that's not the only reason it's a success.
Yeah.
And I don't enjoy that conversation with anybody because then they try to convince me on why I need to look at it from a numbers perspective. And you don't start creating because of social media, because of digital, like Instagram or anything. You start creating because you have a passion for it.
Yeah. I'm really glad you turned this towards, because my next kind of question was going to be about social media. And I struggle with this too, where the social media companies know what they're doing. They have the best designers and best people manipulators in the world who have set up their platforms so that everything is gamified. People are chasing those numbers, chasing the number of likes, the number of comments, the number of retweets, and it can be easy to begin to see that as an end unto itself.
Yeah.
And it's like, no, wait, I just came here to like let people know about something. This is supposed to be the community message board in the middle of the park that people can walk by and get an idea of what's happening.
Yeah.
But this isn't the park.
Exactly.
This isn't where the things are happening.
Yeah.
But when you're on the social media, like, the platform does everything it can to think, like, to make you think like, no, this is the space, this is the town hall, when it's like, no, it's not.
Exactly.
This is just a convenient tool. And sometimes those tools aren't convenient, and sometimes like our relationships with them have to be continuously like fought back against.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that as a creator that's you're building a platform, and I think that platform, it can be said to like exist outside of all of these individual social media platforms that it's on, but how do you like reconcile like FTI as a platform unto itself versus FTI on Instagram or FTI on I don't know what other social media.
Instagram is like the main one that I like direct people to. So it's actually awesome that you said that, because I'm really trying to figure out a way to make it more more known as like an in-person thing you can attend as well. Because I'd be hypocritical to say like, of course, like we all check the numbers, but like the numbers isn't the reason I do FTI.
Yeah.
I love seeing numbers go up because it just means more eyes on what's going down, and maybe Emerson Corleone can have another stream on his song. But if I base FTI's success off of digital platforms and not for the work we're doing for creators in the community, I think I need to figure out a way to where it can be a thing you can attend, whether it's a concert, whether FTI is doing a pop-up market at like the punk rock flea market, or whether someone's like, hey, Matt, we're doing this concert, we'd love FTI to be a sponsor on it. Making sure that the in-person presence has such a strong, if not stronger, like, hey, we're here, than you going on Instagram.
Yeah.
Because I find that I used to judge FTI's success off of Instagram followers and numbers and all of that. But again, it was like that Grammarly AI thing where I lost myself in it all.
Yeah.
So if I can figure out the perfect way to consistently make sure FTI is an in-person event instead of being the park, I think it will really help me figure out how eventually it can be monetized, or how I can eventually make it a bigger thing for artists to go like, yep, need to be a part of that.
Yeah. And just making sure that you're not tying your horse to, like, as a lot of people probably found with something like Twitter, where you're like, oh, Twitter's great, it's this platform. And then like the world's biggest jackass billionaire like buys it, and then suddenly you're like, what? Like, am I supporting him? Like, technically you are. Like, if every tweet is a, you know what I mean? It just becomes this weird world. And like, it's kind of the same with Instagram and like Zuckerberg and these things where these platforms become like a necessary, it's not even a necessary evil, because I do think there is so many awesome opportunities from the internet and from making these connections. And like as you found, FTI could become this thing that people don't have to be in Guelph to join or to take part in this way. But like then at the same time, it's not a neutral platform, you know. Like there is this nice neutrality of as another not platform, but like as another medium like radio. The radio waves exist, and you can turn the dial to go to different stations, but they don't own the radio. They don't own the platform. Like they don't own the physical thing that sits in your house that connects to those airwaves, and that can lead to real competition.
Yes.
And the internet, it's just so much more complicated where like I remember I'm a little older than you, and I remember the internet of my youth being this wild west of like a billion different websites, and there were actually different websites, and each website had a different look and feel.
Used to be so fun.
They were chaotic, and like, you know, you can visit some of these, like Space Jam. The website still exists from the 1996 movie, I think, and you can go see what that website looked like. But now everything is just Reddit, social media, Facebook. Like it's these few platforms, and yeah, it can just be frustrating to want to like embrace that Wild West nature of what the internet used to be to what it still could be.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if I even have a question in there from that, but
no, I should have been not on the computer at 6 years old, but that's how far back I remember like quickly becoming addicted. And it used to be so fun, so colorful. Like websites weren't trying to sell you things; they were just trying to show you things.
Yeah.
But now every website looks the exact same, and every website's trying to sell you something.
It's the distillation of like, oh, everyone's read the blogs, everyone knows the tips and tricks. When like, yeah, people used to just be a little bit more freeform, and some of that freeform exploration is getting. Like, I shouldn't say it. I know there are still independent web development and there are those things, but it feels like you have to go out of your way.
Very much, because they're not like the first 5 results on Google.
Yeah.
Like, and something I heard like a month ago, and it was just in like a sarcastic conversation, but I was like, yeah, you're actually speaking the truth. Social media is not real. Like your Instagram page could be pulled tomorrow and you could have nothing to show from it. So like when they said, yeah, like social media is cool, it can help you build, but it's not real. And I was like, that's such a really like out there way of thinking about it. But I understood, or at least my perspective understood what they were trying to say. Because if FTI's Instagram was pulled tomorrow, all I have to show for it digitally is what's on my Seagate hard drive at home.
Right.
I wouldn't get that community back in the snap of a fingers, because some people might not know it's even gone. They just might kind of go like, oh, well, all right, that was cool. Next thing.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good reminder for me. And even in the Instagram followers that I have been able to get and things like that, where you're really vulnerable. You're vulnerable to, like, I mean, Canadian news saw this, where I talked to Adam A. Donaldson on this podcast about how tricky it is to be in the news business in a local sense, because so a couple years ago, Canadian government wanted to start charging these social media companies. They said, nope, screw you. We're just not allowing any news. And now you can't have news on social media.
Yeah.
But like, what the hell is news? Is this news? It's I don't call it news, but if I did nothing but spoke to politicians and put those podcasts out, like, is that not news? Like, it makes us so vulnerable to just the whims of these platforms and what they're willing to choose. And then, like, I mean, you even kind of see it, like, I don't know if you're on TikTok or you're familiar with TikTok.
Familiar, yeah.
There's this, because of the censorship on TikTok, people started coming up with these, like, creative ways where instead of saying, like, killed or dead, they say unalived. And now that as like a grammatical tick has become so prevalent with some people that they just start saying it unironically, but like really they are carefully curating how they talk to fit the whims of this platform. And like, I think that's a tricky place to be in when you're being that careful and being that curated.
Yeah.
I forget who it was, but a creator on a podcast I listened to, they talked about they knew they had to delete Twitter from their phone. And this was years ago when they started constantly finding themselves running the like mental algorithm of, oh, would that be a funny thought to share on Twitter? Like, would that, if they had a thought, it was like all of their own thoughts and ideas were being pre-filtered through this audience idea of like, would people think that's funny? Would people do this? And like, I find myself doing that when I'm on like vacation, where I see a thing and my first thought isn't like, wow, that's beautiful, I'm glad I'm seeing that. I'm running it through my own personal algorithm in my head of like, oh, would that make a good shot for the Instagram? Would that make a good? And it's like, and then you almost have to take a step back where you're like, oh, wait a second, like that's not a good way. Like that is putting the platform first in your mind, right? And you're pre-filtering your thoughts, your ideas, like what you're wanting to do versus like, what is this going to look like when I post it? What is it? And I think that's tough. I think
that is perfect. Like it's like that short form of dopamine that you think everything needs to be validated and seen by your social media circle. Like
it's like, did it even exist if it didn't happen on the gram?
Exactly. Like right. Like my girlfriend and I saw Rainbow Kitten Surprise last September at a Budweiser Stage or Gardens, the old Ontario place.
Yeah.
And so many people were just consistently recording, uploading. Yeah. And it's like, you bought these tickets, your followers didn't, your friends didn't.
Yeah.
Enjoy it, like record it. Hell yeah, who am I to say don't record what you want to? But like going right to your Instagram story.
Yeah. And it's tricky because you understand that perception of like, well, it's nice to feel seen. It's nice to like, it's nice when you post a little thing and then someone in their life like knows like, oh, you went to that show. How was that show? And it sparks a conversation. Like all that's good. But you're right. Like that's the positive side. The negative side is when you have no memories of the concert because you were recording it the whole time. And then when you go look at those, like they're never actually that good videos.
Yeah.
Like they're never worth watching. They're never worth like, you're never gonna want to revisit that version of the song on like your crappy mic on your smartphone in your pocket from the middle of the crowd. Like it might mean something to you, like the photo might mean something, the 10-second snippet might mean something. Like it's not about not capturing, it's just making sure that you're able to stay present.
Yes.
Yeah.
I went to Elimination Chamber with my girlfriend, my mom, and my brother, and then my other friend Brandon, and I recorded snippets of it throughout, and like, but I was also making sure if I was recording, the phone was like this and my eyes were on it,
right?
Because I still was in the moment and I wasn't making sure that you got the exact view from my seat so you could feel validated about where I was sitting.
Yeah.
I've tried to delete Twitter a handful of times actually, but I find myself coming back to it, and I really wish I didn't, because it's become Facebook where your For You page is just what's for everybody else.
Yeah.
And I've had to explain to my girlfriend, like, I don't listen to 21 Pilots. I don't watch these like TikTok memes that are now on Twitter. Like, I just want to look at wrestling, what my friends are doing, and music.
Yeah.
And she's like, yeah, but it's your For You page, so it's for you. I'm like, no, it's not.
And every platform, like Twitter especially, can just be like, well, I mean, they all have their own bigger issues, but the like just toxic nature of like what it feeds you and things like that. It's, you have to just constantly be on guard from it.
Agreed.
Yeah. And like, we know that to talk about how it's not real life, we are protective of our real life, or at least we should be protective of our real life spaces, where like everyone acknowledges that like downtown Guelph would be so much worse if every building had a billboard on top of it.
Yep.
On the one hand, you could say like, oh, but that would be such a great monetary idea. It's like, yeah, but the value, like the value of one billboard would be high because they're like, oh, people would be looking at it. The value of everything having a billboard now drops the value down to zero.
Agreed.
Because it just becomes like, well, it's an ugly eyesore. And that kind of feels like where we're at with social media, where it was like, it was a cool place that people went to and there was value there. And now it's almost like this obligated thing. And every post feels like it's a billboard, and if it's not an actual sponsored advertisement, then it's like you're competing with these brands putting things out, and like you and I are competing in that same space for people's eyes, and it can be kind of disheartening. And maybe that's some of the same thing that can lead to people feeling like burnt out because they get too stuck in the minutia of the artificialness of it and not like, what is the reason I'm actually doing this? What is the in-person events you're trying to facilitate? The connections between artists?
Yeah.
So I guess that could lead me to the questions I wanted to explore with you, where it's like, what does membership look like for an artist? Like, what are the sorts of interactions they get to have with the FTI community? And yeah, like what are the benefits of being a member?
Yeah, so like at the forefront, like I would say the coolest thing about FTI is the social media platforms we do have. They kind of offer their own like sort of like not unique thing, but they yeah, okay, yeah, they kind of offer their own like unique thing. Like Instagram, we have a pre-written PDF where it's like, "Hey, Mindy Sounds just dropped a new song. Mindy, do you want it on our story?" Mindy says yes all the time.
Mm.
And so he sends me the cover art and the 30-second preview. We post Mindy's song story preview on our story. That's a way of quick social media. That's a way of quick promotion for Mindy. Oh, you want to really know who's in the FTI community? We have a Discord. Discord. So you come to Discord, you join in, and then there's like different channels for different things.
Mm-hmm.
But the conversation channel is called The Ring. And people just talk about their days. We have a good morning one where I try to say good morning like every morning. Sometimes I don't, but it's just like, hey, this is what's going on in my world. Hey,
Mm-hmm.
like what's going on in your world. Then I say, let's continue this conversation in the ring. Twitter is another one like where it's like Instagram where someone's like, hey, Matt, I'm live streaming on Twitch tonight. Night Sky just celebrated his 23rd birthday this last Saturday. And Night Sky's like, do you mind if you like retweet my post? Can you post this video? 100% I can. So there's a lot of cool things you can get out of becoming a part of the FTI community as an independent artist or a fan of independent artists. It's just where you prefer to see it the most.
Mm-hmm.
Where I selfishly would love everyone to see it the most is Instagram because that's where it just lives 24/7.
Yeah.
But like for you, for example, I already know this session and future sessions that they're going to be put on the FTI story right away. Just so it's kind of like a, hey, this is what Jordan's doing. We're going to put it on the story. People see it. People get involved. I think on Saturday, my good friend Tyler Warden, I sent him the Growing Guelph Instagram page because I told him about tonight or
Mm-hmm.
today rather. And he's like, that's so cool. I need to know what this is all about. And then he's like, send me. I'm like, sent.
That's cool.
So it's all about the platform being like creating more platforms.
Yeah. It's so, I mean, you had sort of you drawn the comparison between FTI and a like music platform or I guess media. I don't know what you even call it, like something like Exclaim, which
Yeah.
I know it as a magazine, and it's almost like you're trying to build this platform that it's not a magazine or a podcast or something like that. It's like a roving collection that
Yes.
sometimes it's an in-person event and sometimes it's the social media posts you put out there, and I have no doubt that at some point if you do it long enough, like you will have a physical magazine or something like that could, even if it's just a one-off book or something like that, right? Like it'll be all of these things,
Yeah.
and that in some ways you're asking people to follow along on your journey because it's like seeing your curated, I don't say family, but your created community that you've built,
Yeah.
and that it's following you gives you the more insight than trying to just follow any individual creator on your
Correct.
own, and that like following you is and when I say you I mean FTI
Yeah,
is
yeah.
like the like it's just more thought and more intention behind it, where you're I'm trying to think of the analogy, it's almost like you're the focusing lens, where there's just so much, there's a lot of creators out there and they're all putting stuff out there on different platforms in different ways, and you're like the focusing, that you're taking all of that ambient light from those people and you're like focusing it into like a laser beam of like attention, where you're saying like, hey, FTI community, I want to put everyone's attention on this particular thing, and that's kind of what like the creator of the week and stuff like that is, right?
Correct.
Which is like, yeah, that's cool. Where do you see this going? Like, where do you see FTI evolving? Do you have like, what are some plans or thoughts and like places that you'd like to try to take it?
This year, particularly, I'm taking it on with what opportunities come my way while figuring out little fun things to do with the FTI brand, if that makes sense. So, like this, for example, a week ago, we didn't know this was happening.
Yeah.
So it's like one of like something like this that like I jump at these opportunities. I love
Yeah.
them because I love meeting new people. I love, even if we weren't going to get together for a podcast, grabbing a coffee, learning about each other, always down for. I love that stuff. In a perspective of looking at the future, I want to figure out a way where FTI remains a free platform for artists to be celebrated while I curate it with genuine artists who support one another instead of just inviting everybody into the house. But I think the way I do that is if I play my role as like the middleman networker more professionally, where if like I connected like music artists to visual artists and I knew like something huge was going to come out of it, like just like a little like a pat on the back or like a thank you, maybe with like a 5% or 10%.
Yeah.
And I get uncomfortable talking about that because it goes to what FTI is all about, which is finding artists for free.
Right.
So it's a circle for me.
I mean, it's so tough, and I respect that. Like, it's hard to talk about the monetization of it because people have this idea of like, well, you should just be creating and like art should be free, but like it's easy to say that from a place of privilege, but like everyone needs to exist, and
Yeah,
existing unfortunately costs
a
money,
lot of money.
and you're doing valuable good things, and it's only because you have that like artist mentality that you would even, like a finance person who makes those connections isn't going to say like, oh, and like they're not going to be shy or ashamed of saying like, oh, and I get my cut as well, because they see themselves as just putting that value in,
Yeah,
and you are putting that value in there too. And I think you'll probably, your idea of what your self-worth is and the value that you are bringing to the table to make these connections, hopefully you can keep getting more and more confident in your ability to say, no, you know what, I do deserve this amount. It's not an extreme amount, but it's a reflection of the value that you're bringing to the table when you're making these collaborations, when you're putting these things together.
yeah,
Like, and like the whole, music media, like all the art is funded by those sorts of things where
exactly.
people like know their worth, know their value, because at the end of the day, like there is a lot of value in this. Like, people making exciting, interesting art has a monetary value because people's time has value, and it's, yeah, again, it's hard to
Agreed.
even talk about it in that sense,
Yeah,
because it's like, yeah, in an ideal world our needs would be met and we would have a universal basic income and we could just explore these sorts of things through the genuine like benefit that it brings to the world. But we don't live in that world, so at the meantime we have to, yeah.
I think when I figure it out, it'll be met with a lot more support than I'm anticipating.
Mm.
And I say that because with the 5 year anniversary and like we getting it on like commemorative t-shirts, is we had to make the t-shirts $35, which was extreme for me. Like it was an
Mm.
extreme value, but that was legitimately the cheapest way we could have made the t-shirt be exactly what we were picturing in our mind, just to see the art and the shirts get paid for.
Yeah.
And so Danielle and I were driving home from where we got the shirts made. And I said, babe, I was like, no, like, this is not it. I'm like, if you tell someone they're paying $35 for a t shirt, we're going to be just collecting t shirts in the house that aren't going to go anywhere. We sold out before even announcing them.
Mm.
So it's the community members like that, and it's the friends and family like that that support me and Danielle and FTI so much that when it comes time to finding a way to monetize it to where maybe it can become my day to day, don't have to worry about going to work like full time, I think it will be a lot easier than what I'm picturing right now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's solely based off of selling t-shirts a month early before it was announced to the general public.
And there are other platforms that are proving the case that like there is the desire for people to get out there and support, like things like Patreon and things like
Yes.
that. That like I know I've explored it a little bit, and I don't even know why I'm reluctant, because like I'm someone who, like, I will happily support creators I like on Patreon, where I know like, oh, it's like $1 a month, like doesn't feel like that much, and it's something that brings a lot of joy to me, so like I know I should be putting it out there. But you're right, it's still just hard when you're at the beginning of something, because it can feel disingenuous. It can make just like an icky feeling to say like, hey, maybe you could support the show. Like, hey, listener, do you like me? Like, give me some money. Like, it
Prove
can
your
just,
worth. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
you can feel like you're, like you're wanting to do something good, but then you're just like putting a hat down and saying like, put money in this if you'd like to. And a lot of us just grow up with the reluctance where you feel like you're asking for a handout
Correct.
and things like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's just something for us as creatives to get past, because it's not something that everyone struggles with. Like we talked about, the narcissist of some people who are just like happily will take every dollar that comes their way and ask for more.
Yeah.
Versus someone like yourself where, the idea of like, well, $35 shirt, like, but why would someone want that? And it's like, well, one, that's how much t-shirts can cost. Like, I've been to concerts lately. I remember when, concert tees were $20 and then they were 25 and then they were 30 and now
50.
35, 40, $50 seems like the going rate that you see.
Yeah.
So it's just something to get over, right?
Yes.
That fear.
Agreed. It's funny with Patreon specifically, that's the one I hear from a lot of people right now. And maybe it comes down to like the value of like, I know what I want to present to people and I know how I want to. If I had a Patreon, like I need to offer something. And of course you can do like the get access to this early, get like this early, but like paywalling that would make a disconnect with joining the FTI community. And I can understand the appreciation of people just wanting to like support and like they do want to be reimbursed in some way. It's just I want to do it in a way, and I feel like I sound like every creative. I want to do it in a different way.
Yeah.
Like there's like that coffee website where it's like buy me a coffee and it's a $5 tip. Our fourth wall, I actually just found out on Saturday, like where we sell FTIstudios.com sells shirts like internationally through a company called Fourth Wall. I didn't know FTIstudios.com had a donation button because it's like a merch shop first and foremost. And my Aunt Kimmy, my Uncle Fran, love them to death. They bought 2 t-shirts and it said my profit was $26. And I was like, oh, like that's weird. Like each t-shirt's only like $3 because like Fourth Wall takes a heavy amount because they're doing all the work. They just give you like $3.
Yeah.
I was like, why am I getting like $26? My Aunt Kimmy found the donation button. And I was just like, oh, that's a thing.
Yeah.
I was baffled.
I mean, and that's how there are a lot of people there who want to like to have the means and to, well, it's interesting what you're doing with this because in a lot of ways you're creating an artist collective, and in like the pre-internet, pre-digital days, that would have meant that like maybe you had a building, maybe you had a great big house to your name, maybe you just had like a farm in the countryside and but you had the material assets that like literally was like the collective can exist here, right?
Yes.
Like I own this building, and that meant that it was a point of by definition, like only the privileged could become the people who had the means to say like, hey, I have this big house. If you're an artist and we're like, come talk to me and maybe you can come live here, maybe you can come do this thing. And you're doing that without the building, the house, the means to your name, and you're almost just like building the house out of like enthusiasm and drive, and you're doing it in this digital space that can exist, and it doesn't have to be tied to any one platform. And I think it's very fascinating.
Thank you.
But it's also because like, yeah, previously artist collectives could exist because there was probably like someone who had some money at the heart of it. Yeah. And like maybe they were an artist themselves and maybe they're like, oh, I can now put together a studio and people can come up under me. And like I'm kind of thinking like, I remember learning about like Andy Warhol. I went to Pittsburgh and there's like the Andy Warhol Museum is a really interesting place. And he was someone that like, as he got like fame and success, he used it as like to build this place where all of his artist friends and this like collective that could be established and like the fostering of all these arts, and like he was able to do that because he had that success.
Exactly.
And I just think it's really interesting to be doing it almost not in reverse, but you know what I'm saying?
I know exactly. Yeah, I 100%.
And I think that's really neat.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I guess to kind of, cap things off here, do you have any upcoming FTI events that you want to promote, and how should people follow you, and how can they learn more?
Yeah. First and foremost, thank you for this. This was really awesome. What I'm going to take away from this is just how much I learned about myself, being able to talk to you and like getting to explain this to like, we just met each other and being able to be this comfortable in a room where it's 2 creatives talking. I'm very fortunate. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Very much for this.
I'm glad to have seen, like, if I have a goal when it comes to these conversations, and sometimes I say this at the beginning and sometimes I don't, where it's like, if I'm doing this well, the microphones and everything should sort of just melt away.
That's how
And
I saw it.
It should just be a conversation. And I think I've seen that in you and like with others, where there's like these nerves at the beginning where you're like, oh, every word I'm saying is being recorded. But then as you go, that just kind of, that fades away. And it's just like, oh, we're just having a conversation. And then at the end, it can almost be like, it's like when the lights come on at the movie theater and you're like, oh, right, I'm a human being and I'm sitting in the seat. And like, that's how I sometimes feel at the end of these conversations. But sorry, I interrupted you
No,
in the
you're
middle of, thank you. First off, thank you for that.
The only thing, depending on like when this comes out, something I'll be at soon.
I believe it will come out this Wednesday, so in 2 days.
Oh.
So it should be out. People potentially could be listening to it as soon as May 7th.
Okay, that's incredible. Okay. Friday, May 23rd, Friday or Saturday, whichever day May 23rd falls on. I think it's a Friday. Johan is going to be playing at the Art Bar. And Johan has been a part of the FTI community for 4 years. It is at the Art Bar. I believe tickets are $15 online, $20 at the door. I'll be working doors, but there will be a heavy FTI presence, of course, with a lot of community members there. We're going to return with Creators of the Week starting next Monday. For the friends who are listening to this upcoming Monday is Cena's Frequencies. He's also out of Toronto. He's a musician. The week after is Johan, but that's because it falls on his concert week. Mm-hmm. If people want to become a part of the FTI community, always very easy to reach me. It is at From the Inside Studios on Instagram or From the Inside Studios at gmail.com. I'm a 26-year-old who doesn't go on their emails a whole lot, but I do always get them. Instagram is the best place to find me. And then, yeah, it has been one hell of a time, and I really appreciated this.
Well, I appreciate you joining me here, too. And I think I'm sure that more than one person in the listening audience has been kind of infectiously captured by the spirit that you're bringing to the table here and is probably eagerly looking to find out more. And maybe you'll see them at an upcoming show or something like that. But yeah, Matt, thanks so much for joining me today.
It was so amazing.
Thanks for listening to Growing Guelph. I've been your host, Jordan Sloggett. Be sure to subscribe to us on social media, on your favorite podcast app, and if you have a recommendation for a future guest you'd like me to speak to, you can reach out to me at growingguelph@gmail.com.